Hey guys, Chuck Davis here. After 7 months of hard work, the LHF Counselor set is finally ready. This was a collaborative effort between myself, John Studden, Patrick Kalangi, and Denise Byers. We all got together on this one, so I really appreciate their hard work and talent on this project. This one features a bevel effect like you've probably never seen before. I'm really proud of this layered set. So with that said, let me show you how you can use the fonts and how to get the most out of them. The LHF Counselor set includes 7 fonts intended to be used together to create the effect shown here. The Outline 1 font, which goes around the letters, the Bevel font, which is the 3D effect for the letters, the Highlight font, which is placed on top of the base, the base font, which are the letters themselves and can be used independently, the shadow overlay font, which adds depth to the shadow font that creates a block shadow effect, and lastly, the Outline 2 font, which helps tie it all together. When you purchase LHF Counselor, you'll find a Counselor sample.ai file included in the package. This will help you see how the letters are stacked and will help you create your own text very easily using your program's Find and Replace feature, which I'll demonstrate later. You must have the LHF Counselor fonts installed in order to see this file correctly. Notice that each layer is independent and may be turned on or off using your program's Layers palette. You don't need to use all of the fonts together, but if you do, they should be stacked in the order shown for best results. I want to draw your attention to the Outline 1 layer. You'll notice that the outline is clear in the center. This is a little different than the way we've done outlines for layered fonts in the past. We did this so that we could make the outline bleed slightly over the bevel. This helps hide any tiny gaps, imperfections, or anti-alias jaggedness. So it's important to note that the outline is the first layer and must be on top if you choose to use it. Also note that the highlight layer should be placed below the bevel layer. This helps it look more natural with some of the ends fading out. This is a good time to point out a rendering quirk in Illustrator that you must be aware of when using layered fonts. If the fonts aren't aligning properly and you have gaps like this, it's because the anti-alias setting is on sharp. So let's open the Character palette by going to Window, Type, and Character. By default, the anti-alias setting is hidden, so if you don't see it, go to the menu up at the top right and click Show Options. You can see that our text is set to Sharp Anti-Alias. This is the problem. In an attempt to render the text more clearly, Illustrator is changing the shapes of the paths. This causes them to not align properly. The fonts themselves haven't really been altered. This is just the way Illustrator is displaying them on the screen. Sharp anti-aliasing has its purpose, but not for large text, and certainly not for layered fonts. So we'll set all the fonts to the crisp setting. Notice that even with the crisp setting, there is still a minor gap. This gap is really only visible when magnified, but if it bothers you, you can change the anti-alias setting to strong, and that will hide the gap. Beware though when using strong as the setting. It actually makes the letters appear bolder than they really are. For this reason, I prefer crisp. Now let me show you how silly all of this really is. We'll change our text layers back to sharp so that we have that extreme gap again. Remember I said that the text really doesn't look like that? What I meant was the underlying paths that create the shape of the letter are still correct. So if you change the text to vector outlines, you'll see the actual paths as we drew them. I'll change the opacity of the outline font so you can see the overlap that we created. See, we actually created the outline font to overlap the bevel font slightly. This helps hide tiny imperfections caused by anti-aliasing or point integer rounding, which is another discussion for another time. So in the end, it's really best to convert the text to vector outlines rather than relying on the application's rendering method for text. Let's turn all the layers back on, and I'll show you a trick for changing the text easily. Now, after you install the fonts, you can type your message and stack these layers easily to create the effect shown. But you can also just use this file I've given you in the package to save you some time. Using your program's Find and Replace function, you can locate the existing text, which is the word signs, and tell it to replace it with your new word, in this case, tavern. As long as you have the LHF Counselor fonts installed, using this file in the future will make it very easy to create your own words without having to stack them all yourself from scratch. Let's revert to the original saved file, and we'll discuss colors for a minute. When you use the bevel font in conjunction with the two shadow fonts and highlight and white, you're essentially creating a convex effect. That is, the letters appear raised. If you use it in this way, you must make sure that the bevel is darker than the base, not lighter. The shadow and highlight layers indicate that the light source is coming from the top left, so the effect looks strange to the eye if the bevel is lighter than the base. That's not to say you can never make the bevel lighter than the base, but if you do this, make sure to turn off the shadow layers and change the color of the highlight layer to a darker shade of the base color. This will create a concave effect, that is, the letters will appear carved into the surface rather than raised. Let's experiment with some other colors. Let's change the base color to a brighter yellow, and we'll make the bevel green. It's a good idea to stay within the same family when choosing the colors for the base and bevel, so the effect will look more natural. I also find that the best effect is usually achieved using lighter colors. If the base and bevel are too dark, the effect isn't as apparent. Let's make the shadow black and the shadow overlay gray. You can change outline 2 also. This outline is mostly decorative, but it does serve a purpose. It helps hold the design together as a single unit. Finally, let's change outline 1 to burgundy. I usually use a dark color, or black, for outline 1, to contrast against the lighter base and bevel colors and help hold it together. Let's revert back to the original file again. We'll turn off the top 3 layers so we can see our base layer better. This color is currently the base solid swatch in the palette. Let's change it to the base gradient swatch. You'll notice that the letters simply turn black. This is because you can't apply a gradient to text in Adobe Illustrator. We need to first convert the font into vector curves. So let's go to Type, Create Outlines. Now we can click on our base gradient swatch, and the letters will change. The problem we have now is that our gradient is vertical. This looks okay on the wide letters, but not so great on the eye. When I turn the bevel effect on, you can see the problem more clearly. So let's open our gradient palette and rotate the direction of the gradient to 90 degrees. This causes the gradient to be horizontal across the letters now. It's a good idea to experiment with various gradients for the base and bevel layers to create more realistic and interesting effects. It's important to remember, though, that once you convert the text to outlines, you can't use your program's Find and Replace trick to replace all of the layers. Since the base layer isn't text, it won't work on that particular layer. So if you're going to change your text, you need to do that first. Okay, so there you go. That gives you a quick overview of what you can do with the fonts and how to use them. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments below, and I'll get to them as quick as I can. And of course, to purchase the fonts, go ahead and go over to letterheadfonts.com. Thanks for watching.